Here is when no contact hits an avoidant. At first, it's going to feel like relief to them because they're under the impression that they're not going to have to deal with the conflict or whatever situation that's causing them to feel vulnerable and makes them feel that they're going to have to potentially feel and express certain emotions that they just simply don't. So because of that, initially, they're going to thrive. They're essentially going to be happy about no contact happening because in their mind, they don't have to deal with this anymore, and they think that things are just going to resume right back to the way that they were once they feel like they're ready to engage with you. But what they don't know is that this is temporary. They're only going to be able to feel this way for as long as this excuse or these distractions are working, but there's going to come a point in time where those effects are going to wear off and they're going to have to confront the reality of their decision and not trying to engage with you and actually make attempts to try to work things out. So for that short period of time, that space soothes their anxiety, but the more that this no contact gets dragged along, the more that this is going to wear off, and they're going to start to feel the real emotions that's going to naturally come up with the thought that this could be a sign that you are moving on. Which segues perfectly into the second thing, and that is the routine feels different without you. Your daily presence starts to fade away, no messages, no warmth, no reassurance that comes from your part, and this is something that starts to really affect them because they've grown accustomed to this, even though it may seem like they don't, because whenever you try to do these things, they just simply have either no response or they end up pushing away from you. But deep down, they do long for those things to happen because they do long for that type of love and energy that you bring to the relationship. But this avoidant attachment style, because it has been adopted by them, gets in the way of that and causes them to feel uncomfortable whenever they want to feel those emotions and also express them back to you. So because of that, they essentially take it for granted when you're doing it in the relationship until this moment, because they're starting to realize how much their emotional safety honestly depends on that, which is not a good thing in itself as well, because they need to have their own emotional stability within themselves, but they rely heavily on you because they didn't have that experience growing up. Their caregivers did not meet their emotional needs and they rejected them in that way. So when they're finally able to experience this from you, this is something that they do cherish deep down. But again, this avoidant attachment style gets in the way of them being able to realize it. So essentially, they notice the absence in the moments where they used to feel seen by you. And that's something that's starting to really affect them because they can't just easily replicate that in a distraction or even whatever excuse that they're trying to tell themselves to make them believe that that's not it and they're perfectly fine, because this is something that's real emotions and that they really genuinely care about and want in their life, and the things that they would use to help them avoid realizing this and suppressing those emotions down are starting to crack and no longer work. The third thing is curiosity turns into quiet monitoring. They'll start checking your socials or even reaching out to mutuals to see and get a glimpse into what's going on with you. They simply want to know, are you actually starting to prioritize yourself and figuring out what you need to do to move on from them in the relationship, or is this just a Trojan horse for you to essentially get them to try to realize the magnitude of losing someone like you in hopes that they'll wake up and attempt to try to work things out? And that's why it's very important that when you are going no contact, you are doing it with the intentions of focusing on yourself, because one, you are sending that clear sign that this is not a joke. You're not doing this because you want to play around and see if they'll come back, but you're doing it because you genuinely want to know what's the best next move for you. And they need to feel that in hopes of them realizing the consequences of continuing this attachment style without trying to work on it, because you can't simply sustainably go through a relationship like this when they're not willing to try to work on things and you're doing everything that you possibly can to make this relationship work just for them to push you away. So it's essentially in that moment that they're trying to find any type of nugget of evidence that you aren't moving on so that they could feel good about continuing to not engage with you, because that's what an avoidant wants to do essentially. There's a part of them that does want to work things out. I don't want to make it seem like they don't, but this avoidant attachment style convinces them to not reach out to you for whatever reason that they have internally, which typically looks like them trying to blame you in some way or some form as to why things aren't working out, because you're too needy or you're asking too much, whatever it might be. They're trying to convince themselves of that so that they don't have to face face the reality that this attachment style is the main culprit and not something that you're doing. But if you're going no contact the correct way, which means not only blocking them from messaging you, but on your social medias, and making sure even sometimes to change up your routine so that you don't accidentally run into them throughout your day-to-day, that's what's going to apply that pressure to them and have them really wake up to the reality of what life will look like without being in a relationship with you. Which leads to the fourth thing, and that is the silence breaks their sense of control. Avoidants thrive when they feel emotionally in charge. It's why they try to manipulate things into going their way, into making it seem like it's you and has nothing to do with them, because this is an attempt to avoid taking responsibility as to why things haven't worked out due to them pulling away, because they don't want to feel vulnerable or express or feel emotions that they perceive to be a threat to their emotional well-being due to how this avoidant attachment style works. So in order to maintain this, they look at things through their own filters and look for different ways to make it seem that it's not about them and is about you and what you're not listening to what they need. But when there's prolonged silence, it starts to break that reality and the veil gets lifted, and they're starting to see how much this avoidant way has affected the relationship, because they genuinely don't see it a lot of the times when you guys are in the relationship, because they're so used to being this way. Their body goes into automatic mode and they start to do this without them realizing it. It doesn't tend to be this purposeful thing that they're doing. It's just an automatic response that's coming up due to them being so used to having to respond to these type of things in this way. So this moment tends to be that big realization to them, and they start to see how detrimental it has been for them not to try to do anything to work on this avoidant attachment style, and how this has played a major role in why things haven't been working out in the relationship. And you may start to see them do more drastic things to distract themselves, like talking to other people or doing things that are out of character for them, and that's their attempt to kind of try to process this, but also to distract themselves from that reality. But they're going to have to face that at some point in time. You can only go so long with suppressing these emotions down before you have to confront them, and this is typically that moment for them, which segues perfectly to the fifth and final thing, and that is regret begins when they realize you've adapted. By you not only going no contact the official way, which means again blocking them on all social medias and making sure that you don't have any connection to them essentially, and doing it for the right reasons, which is for yourself to get the space away from them in the relationship to figure out what is the next best move for you, they are in some way or some form going to understand that you are no longer playing this game and are now starting to understand how this relationship really isn't something that you want to engage in anymore. And that's important because when you're in love with someone, you are going to naturally feel like this is the relationship for you, and you have to do everything that you possibly can to try to work things out, because you don't know if you're going to find this love again, and you just have to do whatever it takes to make things work. But the thing is, sometimes a relationship just is not going to work due to one side just not meeting the needs that you need in a relationship, and that's okay. But what's not okay is for you to continue to go through this cycle over and over again, expecting for change when this person just isn't at that point to actually do that. And you beginning to have that shift is going to be felt by them, and they're going to naturally start to have some regret with not trying to reach out to you sooner to see if they can work things out, because contrary to belief, your avoidant ex deep down does want to be in a relationship with you. But as I mentioned throughout this video, this attachment style doesn't allow them to express that and show up in the relationship the way that you need to. But they need to understand how this is a detriment to the relationship and how they need to make attempts to try to work on this, right? You're not expecting them to change overnight. You just need them to make some type of progress to show that they're willing to do what it takes to make this relationship work. Because again, you've put 120% into this relationship and trying to make sure that they're seen, heard, understood, and genuinely loved. And to you, their actions are showing that they're not appreciative of it because they're not doing the things that you need them to. And this is hopefully something that will cause them to start to reflect on their own, and really look to get some help through a therapist to process this in hopes to heal from this one day and be able to show up in the relationship. But we don't know how long that's going to take, but I can tell you that it's going to most likely take a significant amount of time because there's a lot of things that they're going to have to unwind when it comes to this. And you really, in this no contact, have to ask yourself, do you want to continue to engage in this relationship and potentially go through this cycle over and over again? Or is it time for you to do what's necessary for yourself, which most likely may mean for you to not only continue to go no contact with them, but to begin to start to heal and move on from this relationship, because that's what's in your best interest. I hope that you did find value in today's video. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.